أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Today we start with verse 90 of Surah An-Nahl. The verse says, Allah commands doing justice, doing good to others, and giving to near relatives, and He forbids indecency, wickedness, and rebellion. He admonishes you so that you may take heed. Now, this verse is a very famous and a very important verse of the Quran because the essence of Islamic teachings has been condensed into just a few words. That is why, from the time of the most righteous elders and the Tabi'een, up to this day, the practice has continued that this verse is recited at the end of the khutbah of Jummah and the two Eids as well. Many Sahabas brought Iman by listening to this verse. Among them are Usman bin Masud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. Then there's a case of another Sahabi by the name of Akhtam bin al-Sayfi Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. He was the chief of his people. When he learnt about the prophethood of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he sent two people of his tribe to survey the situation and come back and report. They came to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and said that our chief has asked two questions. Who are you and what are you? The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam replied, the answer to the first question is that I am Muhammad, son of Abdullah. And the answer to the second question is that I am a servant of Allah and His Rasul. After that, he recited this verse. And two people requested him to recite it once again. And Prophet ﷺ kept reciting it until they learnt it by heart. Now then, when these people returned back to Akhtam, they reported that the first question, which was to find out his lineage, he did not give much attention to it. He just said, I am Muhammad, son of Abdullah, and that's it. But when we checked his lineage with others, we found out that he was very high in lineage and nobility. Then they told the second answer and recited the words of this verse. On this, Akhtam said, this tells us that he bids morals which are high and forbids morals which are low. Let all of you embrace his religion as soon as possible so that you stay ahead of other people and not lag behind as camp followers. And this is narrated in Tafseer Ibn Kathir. Now this verse consists of 3 do's and 3 don'ts. The do's are, number 1, to do justice. Number 2, to be good. And number 3, to give to relatives. Then come the 3 don'ts. They are, number 1, shameful acts. Number 2, evil deeds. And number 3, transgression. Now, I'm going to explain them to you one by one. To begin with, let's go to the 3 do's first. Number 1, al-adl. Now, the real and literal meaning of this word is to make equal. Now, the word adl is actually a very comprehensive word and it has many different shades. One of its shade is that when you judge between people, do it with fairness. The second sense of the word is moderation, which is called itadal. The word itadal has its roots in adl. It means moderation between the two extremes of excess, which is called ifrat, and deficiency, which is called tafrit. Then another meaning of adl is similarity between the inward and the outward state of a person. That is, what one says or does through the obvious organs of the body should be compatible with what he believes and lives by. Now, how do you implement adl? Adl with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that you do not do shirk, to obey his commandments and totally abstain from what he has forbidden, and give preference to the rights of Allah over his own desires of the nafs. Then comes adl with your own self. What is that? That you protect yourself from all such challenges which bring physical or spiritual destruction upon you. That one refuses to fulfill such desires of his self which are harmful for him in the end. Be content and satisfied, observing patience, and avoid putting unnecessary burden on oneself without valid excuse. In short, to stay away from anything that harms your physical or spiritual self. Then comes adl between one's own self and the rest of the creation. The essential sense is that one should deal with the whole creation in a cooperative spirit, wishing well, doing good, having sympathy, never to betray anyone with the slightest breach of trust in any transaction, whether minor or major, and that no human being is hurt by anything said or done by him, whether apparent or concealed. Then justice between two parties or two people demands that the person must decide the case without any tilt towards anyone and in accordance with what is the truth. Next in line is al-ihsan. Number 2, that is. The real meaning of al-ihsan is to make something good, to make something beautiful. The word ihsan is from the word husn, which means beauty. And ihsan has two kinds. Number 1, to make one's own habits, deeds, morals good and perfect. For example, to come out with acts of worship in their best possible form. To make efforts to improve upon personal and moral deeds and to seek betterment in dealing with others. The meaning of this kind of ihsan is explained by Prophet ﷺ in a famous hadith. The gist of it is that worship Allah as if you are seeing Allah. And if you cannot do this, then at least have this much certitude that Allah is watching you. Watching what? Watching what you are doing. The second form of ihsan is that one deals with the other person nicely, decently, favorably. Ihsan is actually one step further and different from adl. Being good to the one who is good to you is adl, and being good to the one who is not good to you is ihsan. There is ihsan with the one who cannot repay you in any way. Ihsan is taking less than your share and giving more than what was required. Then adl is that your secret and public life are the same, but ihsan is that your secret life is better than your public life. Then forgiving someone who has physically or verbally hurt you rather than equal retaliation is ihsan. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala openly declares in the Quran that He loves those who do ihsan. The third thing recommended is ita zil qurba, to give to relatives their due. Now, what has to be given has not been specified, but in another verse of the Quran, which is chapter 17, verse 26, which says, give the relative his due right. Now, what comes under his due right? Serving them financially, as well as physically, visiting them when sick, taking care of them when they are in need, giving verbal comfort, and to show concern and sympathy. Now, for example, a father works recklessly and provides for every need of his son. That's not enough. He has to give him time, share his problems, and try to solve them for him in the best possible way. Show concern over his concerns and give him sympathy, encouragement, moral support. Similarly, when parents are old, just providing for their needs is not enough. You have to take out time to spend with them, do various acts which please them, serve them physically, listen to them, and be sympathetic and supportive to them. Now, all these things come under ihsan, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions them separately in order to place stress on its importance. Then we move on to the three don'ts. Forbidden are al-fahsha, which is translated as shameful acts. It means word or deed which is all too open and clear, and everyone knows it is as evil or bad. And its examples are nudity, homosexuality, foul language, slander, backbiting, men and women doing shameful deeds. It has a wide range. And number two, al-munkar, it means those sins which the Sharia has identified specially and forbidden. It includes both outward and inward sins. And number three, al-baghi, which means transgression. Now we just saw that the meaning of adl is what? Moderation. And baghi, in order to understand, is the exact opposite of adl. It's the exact opposite of moderation. It is crossing the limits of moderation. The Prophet ﷺ said that injustice or baghi is such a sin that punishment for it awaits in the akhirah. That has to come anyway, but Allah Ta'ala punishes that person in the mortal world as well, even though he may fail to realize that punishment he received was for a particular injustice committed by him, and that Allah Ta'ala has promised to help the victim of injustice. Verse 91, fulfill the covenant of Allah when you have pledged to do so, and do not break your oaths after you have sworn them. For swearing in His name, you have made Allah your surety. Surely Allah has knowledge of all your actions. In the verse before this one, Allah forbade injustice. And now right after forbidding injustice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids the breaking of covenants, which is also, if you see to it, it's a form of an injustice. Now there are two kinds of covenants, one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and secondly with people. Now these covenants are altogether 4 in number. First is the covenant of a lust, which every soul took along before coming in this world. It is called Ahde al-Last, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gathered all the souls and said, am I not your Rabb? And all the souls said, yes Allah, you are our Rabb. Now what does this covenant demand? That none is to be worshipped, whether practically or metaphorically, except Allah. Every act of obedience to Allah comes under this covenant. Number 2 is the covenant of La ilaha illallah. And it is because of this covenant that we declare to be a Muslim. This covenant does not just demand lip service. You have to live La ilaha illallah. This is a constant struggle, a constant decision you have to make every moment of your life. Whatever you are about to do, you have to put Allah's will on top. Whether it's your own nafs, your family, your friends, your society, no one's approval, no one's consent is more important than Allah's will. And this is the test, saying La ilaha illallah. Saying La ilaha illallah is something extremely simple. Very easy. But living La ilaha illallah is the toughest struggle of a moment. Number 3 is any covenant you make with yourself that, I will fast for so many days, or I'm going to give this much sadaqah, or I'm going to pray so many nawafil if my this wish is fulfilled. This is called nazar. And number 4 are the promises you make with other people, taking Allah's name. Like people say that by Allah, I will do this or not do this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that be committed and be honest to all these promises. And like in everything else, there are exceptions in this case also. And that is that if you have made a promise, you have sworn by Allah, and later you find out that your oath or qasam is on something which Allah forbids, then it is better to break that oath and give kafara. For example, you swore by Allah that you will not speak to a person forever. Obviously, Allah won't like that. You break this oath, give kafara, and start talking to that person. Verse 92, do not behave like that woman who had spun her yarn strongly and then had broken it into pieces, nor take your oath from mutual deceit, so that one people may take undue advantage over the other. For Allah puts you to trial by these oaths, and on the day of judgment, He will certainly reveal to you the truth about which you differed. Now, the topic of breaking oaths continues in this verse also. This shows that this matter is something extremely important. Where? In the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the verse starts by saying that do not behave like that woman who had spun her yarn strongly and then had broken it into pieces. Now, this sentence has a background. It says that when this verse was revealed, there was this woman by the name of Rita bin Amr, and she used to live in Makkah, and she was known to be mad, and she used to spin yarn and then break it into small shreds and pieces. Maybe she was frustrated. Maybe she was in a fit of depression. Maybe she was in a fit of anger, in which people usually start breaking and damaging their useful things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by using her example, wants to teach that breaking your oaths is a form of insanity. It does not bring you any benefit. Rather, you lose benefit. And the worst of the losses is that you become so low in the eyes of your Creator. Allah wants to teach that like the mad woman, we build a beautiful pattern of good deeds and then shed it into pieces by acts such as breaking oaths. Then after this example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes up another aspect regarding the breaking of oaths. And this aspect deals with the fact that usually, why do people break oaths? One reason is to cheat someone. The word used for this cheating is dakhala, which comes from the root word dakhal, and dakhal means mixing, which is for a wrong cause, like people mix milk with water in order to cheat, or mixing crushed brick powder with chili powder, and so on. And it includes all such dealings and transactions where you are cheating, and along with it swearing that you are not cheating. So Allah detests that you are cheating, and side by side you are swearing that you are not cheating. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids us to do that. And the second most common reason of breaking oaths is that one group is strong, more in power, and the other group is weak. And they have made a pact or agreement. Now the powerful group, because they feel strong and because they want to assert their authority, break the pact easily. And this case is applicable to individuals also, that the powerful one promises the weak one something and then forgets about it, because he knows that the weak one would not dare to question him. Allah wants that warns that stay by the pledge that is given and let all the gains and losses rest with Allah. The conclusion of the verse is that all such situations, as mentioned in the verse, are a device to test Muslims. With the help of this test, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala determines if they would obey the desires of their nafs and break the pledge, or take false oath, or go on to sacrifice their selfish motives in obedience to the commands of Allah. The end of the verse says that the happenings of the day of judgment will definitely show you how grave a sin this is, even though now you may fail to realize it, and on the day of Qiyamah, its evil consequences are unimaginable. The Prophet ﷺ said that a flag shall be planted on the back of the pledge breaker on the day of resurrection, which will become the cause of his or her disgrace. Verse 93, and if Allah willed, He could have made you all one nation, but He lets go astray whom He wants and guides whom He pleases. But most certainly you will be questioned about all your actions. Now Allah could have made the whole human race into one single group and programmed them like the angels, but this was not His scheme. His scheme about the human beings is that they would be tried and they would be tested with trials, temptations, and then rewarded or punished accordingly. Verse 94, O believers, do not take oaths to deceive each other, lest your foot slip after being firmly fixed upon guidance, and taste the evil consequences for debarring others from the way of Allah and incur a mighty punishment. Now here the believers are addressed. We Muslims are addressed, and they are commanded that be fair in your dealings. Do not cheat people in pacts or businesses or any kind of transaction and any kind of deal. And Allah points out the reason that if you people would do such things, then the non-Muslims will get a negative image of Islam, an ugly picture of the Muslims. And because of you, they would get a chance to point fingers to Islam. And because of your behavior, they would think 100 times before accepting Islam. And this phenomena has come true now. We can see for our own selves, the European countries, what image the Muslims have. No one wants to have transactions with them. No one trusts them. No one wants to even live near their localities. The beard and the hijab alerts them, and even a Muslim name on the passport is enough to scare them. And we have read this previously in the same surah, verse 88, that there are people who debar others from the way of Allah. And such people fall into two categories. Number one, who literally stop others, and number two, who portray such a negative picture of Islam that people run away from Islam. A majority of Muslims fall in this category, and it is because of them that every single Muslim is mistrusted. Verse 88 of this surah and this verse also say that such people deserve a mighty punishment, much more in intensity than the punishment given to the common sinners. Verse 95, do not sell the covenant of Allah for a petty price. Certainly Allah's reward is far better than all your gain, if you but knew it. Now the message of the verse is that don't disobey Allah for the sake of dunya. The word samanan kalila, the literal meaning of which is a small price, here means worldly life and its gains. No matter how major they may be, yet as compared with the gains of the akhirah, even the entire world and its entire wealth is nothing but a small price. Whoever opts for the gains of the mortal world at the cost of the returns of the hereafter has made a deal of utter loss. Because selling of something which is supreme, which is everlasting, in exchange of something that is low and about to perish is something which no sensible person would do. A commentator by the name of Ibn Atiyah has identified certain things as breaking the covenant of Allah. He says that your duties and responsibilities are covenant of Allah. Your jobs for which you are paid or given a salary are a covenant of Allah. If you cheat in your job or do not meet its requirements and take your salary in full, then this is breaking your covenant with Allah. This also tells us that all forms of bribery is unlawful. And an example of this is that a government servant receives a salary for what he does. And his pledge to Allah is that he would perform the job assigned to him against the salary he receives. Now, if he goes about asking for some sort of return from someone in order to do that job, then this is breaking the covenant with Allah. Verse 96. Whatever is with you is transitory, and whatever is with Allah is everlasting. We will certainly reward those who are patient according to the noblest of their deeds. Now the worldly gains, Maulana Sayyid Asghar Hussain says that this verse has a general sense, therefore included under it are wealth and possessions of the present world, as well as all states and matters that one experiences. And these could be happiness, sorrow, pain, comfort, sickness and health, gain and loss, or someone's friendship or enmity. All these states are transitory and must perish. This verse is such a verse that it should be learned by heart, that whenever you are faced with the choice between dunya and akhirah, it should be recited and remembered. It will help to make the right decision. The end of the verse says that the patient will be rewarded. Why is it being said? Because to make this sort of a deal where you lose on dunya for a gain in akhirah, you need to have real patience, or rather you cannot achieve this station without patience.